Hey, book lovers. My name is Em, and I want to talk about books. And cats. Hey, book lovers, welcome back. Happy Pride Month. This episode is going to be loosely Pride themed, I guess. It wasn't really planned that way. It came about because I just got a couple of new books, and they both just happen to be fantastic works by members of the LGBTQIA community. And it just kind of worked out perfectly. So the first book I want to start with is 10 Steps to Nanette, a Memoir Situation by Hannah Gadsby. So Hannah Gadsby is a stand-up comedian who grew up in Tasmania, in a very rural and homophobic place. She is also autistic. So on top of all of this, Hannah also discovers during the book that she is gay. So Hannah created an hour-long comedy special called Nanette, which exploded in popularity, and it caused quite a stir in the stand-up comedy community. I watched it when it first came out, and I loved it. She starts out with sort of standard comedy, and it is incredibly funny. But then as she goes on, she begins to tackle these bigger issues affecting the gay community, the female community, really anyone who isn't a cis white male. You know, the patriarchy. And I think this is what caused the initial anger, because I also remember what happened after this show just blew up. A lot of comics were saying that what she had created wasn't stand-up, and it definitely was a mixture of several different things. It was a very interesting piece. It was incredible and different, and I think that was part of the issue as well, because they didn't think of it, and they couldn't think of it. Her brain is wired differently than most people's. All of these comics do the same basic thing, and it probably freaked them out that she did something that was different, and so many people responded so quickly and in such a positive way. Anyway, that's Nanette. It is on Netflix, and I highly recommend watching it. It's moving and it's funny. It's anger-inducing. It's just a complete artistic experience. And she talks about like art history and stuff too. It's really, really fantastic. I loved it. I don't really care if it fits into any box. I find the box to be rather boring. So whether or not it's actually stand-up comedy, I think it at least partially is, and it's fantastic, so I don't really care about that. So the book came after Nanette and the immense and sudden popularity and, the backlash, of course. And it is a memoir, which is already a genre that I love, but it also mixes in what was happening in Tasmania during that time, which was the mid-90s, which was a strange, strange time. And I remember it very clearly. I think that I am probably around the same age as Hannah. So I knew very little about Tasmania, and it was really fascinating to glimpse some of the history, like the beginning of the state, which that was another thing I didn't know. Tasmania is a state of Australia. And I guess I always thought it was its own country. I don't know. I never really thought about it. It was just very interesting, and I learned a lot. She also interspersed stories about the fight for the legalization of homosexuality in Tasmania, which was going on while she was just a blissfully unaware child growing up. But she kind of pieced it together afterwards. It was not legalized in Tasmania until 1997, which is just wild. It just blows my mind. And I am so grateful for how far the world has come. I know we still have a long way to go, but at least people can say who they are and be who they are. Anyway, throughout everything, the book tells the story of Hannah's journey from a confused, outcast child to a stand-up comic and beyond. It is beautifully and honestly written, and I loved this book. I highly recommend 10 Steps to Nanette, A Memoir Situation by Hannah Gadsby. And I recommend that you watch Nanette on Netflix. It's fantastic. And now it is time for a quick break. And when I come back, I have a completely different type of book. It is a guide to womanhood made by a couple of amazing drag queens. So stick around. Welcome back, book lovers. Okay, so now I want to talk about one of my favorite forms of art, and that is drag. I am obsessed. Drag queens are so talented and so creative, and they literally do it all. They sing, they dance, they sew, they do makeup, they can style a wig, just everything. And they create these amazing works of living art using their own bodies. I find it incredible. And currently, one of the best-known duos of drag queens are Trixie and Katya Zamalachukova. And I absolutely adore them. They were on RuPaul's Drag Race, and they kind of used that as a jumping off point to creating a literal empire. Trixie Mattel in particular, they're both doing very well, but she is so just business-minded and hardworking, and I really admire that. I also really respect their comedy, and I just love everything that they do. I would definitely recommend checking out their YouTube show. It's called but I do want to warn you that it is somewhat intense. It's not for the kiddies or anyone that is easily offended, but it is so funny. They are such a fantastic comedy duo. So one of their many projects was writing a book, and that is the second book for this episode. It is called Trixie and Katya's Guide to Modern Womanhood, and it is hilarious. They set it up to look like a old school women's magazine, except it's in a hardcover book. There is a bunch of pictures of Trixie and Katya that are just fantastic. They do all of these different looks, and they're so beautiful. It's so amazing. The book is broken into 3 sections. There's beauty and style, homemaking, and relationships. There are various topics in each section. Some of them are written by Trixie and some by Katya. And then there are also some sections that are conversations between the two of them. And little snippets of those conversations have actually been on which I found kind of funny. So the beauty and style section covers everything from hair, makeup, and heels to personal hygiene, self-care, drug use, and alcohol. There's even a recipe for a vodka lemonade in there. They write with a mixture of humor and frank honesty, and it's beautifully balanced and incredibly entertaining. The homemaking section covers finances, food, social media, travel, interior design, everything a woman could possibly want, a modern woman. And the final section is about relationships, and it covers meeting people, hookups, friendships, and breakups. The breakup section had a quote that I just loved. The aftermath of shattered pieces post-breakup are actually rune stones that truth tell. I just thought that was fantastic. And speaking of great quotes, this book also begins with a John Waters quote that fits book lovers beautifully. It's good advice. The quote is, if you go home with somebody and they don't have books, don't beep them. Don't sleep with people who don't read. Trixie and Katya's Guide to Modern Womanhood is fun and campy, and hidden within there are gems of wisdom too. And I just absolutely loved it. And if you end up loving Trixie and Katya, I highly recommend the documentary Moving Parts. It follows Trixie during her come up into fame, and it also ends up chronicling a very tumultuous time in Trixie and Katya's friendship. It's kind of bleak, and that is in very stark contrast to the bright, toy-like image that she portrays. It's really fantastic. And I just love hearing people's stories. Hers is an uplifting rags to riches tale while also dealing with the very real difficulties of life. It's really good. So, moving parts. So, that is it for this pride-filled episode. There is no new chapter of Ocean Eyes this week. Honestly, I have been plagued with writer's block and also just kind of overwhelmed with other projects. I am focused on getting back to it this week, so I will have a new chapter for you in the next episode. Thank you so much for listening, book lovers. Until next time, keep reading.